This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
A Northern Cheyenne woman named Iron Teeth witnessed and endured much of the following story. She was born in the late summer of 1834 in the Black Hills of present western South Dakota, which meant that she was 44 to 45 years old in 1878-79 when the following events played out. Her father was Northern Cheyenne, and her mother Lakota, and she had grown up with her father's people. Like other Native American families of the time, Iron Teeth's family roamed seasonally with her people, covering the vast territory between the northern plains and Mexico, to trade with other tribes and with those few white people who had come early to the southern plains. Having graduated from using dogs to using horses to transport their possessions, they hunted wild game, principally buffalo, for their food, and used the hides for clothing and shelter. Iron Teeth remembered a time when her people had planted corn using sharpened sticks, but she had also seen them gradually turn away from that enterprise to follow the migrating herds of buffalo more exclusively. Iron Teeth told her story in 1926, when she was perhaps 92 years old, physically bent, worn, and furrowed. Yet she recalled many historical events in her people's past, which spanned from the Northern Cheyennes' earlier free-roaming days to those harder times of the later 19th century, when the U.S. government restricted her people to reservations. In particular, Iron Teeth had strong memories of warfare and of the struggles against government soldiers, particularly the agonizing events of the 1870s. She was in her late 30s and early 40s then, married and with a family of her own. Perhaps because of her station among the Cheyennes, much of her memoir dwelt on the manifold historical tragedies that had beset her people in those days. Her account is straightforward and matter-of-fact, but it evokes emotions in the reading. Her story, among many other sources, describes and substantiates the human calamity that befell her people at Fort Robinson, Nebraska, in the snow and bitter cold of January 1879. Iron Teeth's people had experienced a long and arduous history. Originally, her ancestors had been part of a larger population of Cheyennes, or Tzitzistas, in their own Algonquian stock language, meaning the people, or the human beings. They were hunters and agriculturalists who lived in the area of the western Great Lakes, in the wooded country of present northern Wisconsin and Minnesota. As with other regional tribes, the Cheyennes migrated west from the Lakes country in the 18th century, driven by enemy tribes who themselves were pushed by ascendant white populations farther east. They were also drawn west by the presence of horses and the ubiquitous buffalo that frequented the prairies and plains. As time passed, the Cheyennes incorporated with other Indian peoples, notably the Sutais, and their culture gradually transformed. They largely discarded their horticultural pursuits, adopted teepees, and followed the buffalo herds. By the late 18th century they had reached the Black Hills, and ranged over lands from the Missouri and Yellowstone drainages in the north to the river valleys of the Platte and Arkansas in the Central Plains. As Iron Teeth remembered, it was a transient population that moved often, according to the seasonal shifting of the buffalo. During their early years on the plains, the Cheyennes fought with adjacent tribes, including the Teton Lakotas and Arapahoes. In the mid-19th century, many Cheyennes, drawn by prospects for trade, gravitated more permanently to the southern plains, while retaining familial and band relationships to some degree. They effectively divided into two tribes, becoming the Northern Cheyennes and the Southern Cheyennes.